It's been about a week and a half since we looked at the developing Marvel Snap metagame. Not only do we get a small surprise balance patch, which is linked in full in the video description down below, we've also just had some organic shifts in the metagame as players have learned to combat the cards that were the early front runners for taking over. Today's video is going to run through the common tech cards that are being played in the format and talk about the impact that they are having. We're going to take a look at the couple of deck lists that I think are the best choice for laddering up with right now. Then we're going to close out with some rambly thoughts and other things related. Let's go ahead and jump right on into it. It's not the first time we've seen his ugly green face pop up as the key tech card in the format, and it probably won't be the last, but Leech is definitely a headlining, defining card in our current format. Both Galactus and Deathwave look to be early frontrunners for best deck when this format first started developing after the Zabu and Surfer nerf, and Leech is excellent into both of those archetypes. The two primary Leech decks that seem to exist in the format right now are definitely Lockjaw decks and Electro decks, both of which have a way to get this card into play sooner rather than later, frequently flipping it out on the fourth turn to wipe all the text off the cards in your opponent's hand. The third deck that looked promising early in the format was Shuri, and she puts massive stats into play, 30 plus power Red Skulls and other things well into the double digits, which has made Shang-Chi one of the key tech cards you can be playing. Basically, every Marvel Snap deck I build these days starts with me having 11 cards to choose because Shang-Chi needs to be an auto-include if I want to be competitive into the points that the Shuri deck is slamming onto the table. Finally, while you could maybe split hairs on whether or not Arrow can be defined as a tech card, she's definitely omnipresent in the format. In fact, I would posit that Arrow and Shang-Chi probably make most decks better in the current format simply by their inclusion. Just very powerful effect that is found in Shuri decks. It's sometimes found in Thanos decks. It's found in just about everything that's looking to get ahead early and slam the door shut on the final turn by dictating where your opponent's plays are going to end up at. As we move on to looking at some specific deck lists, I actually posted a highlight with these 12 cards earlier this morning, calling them the best version of the best deck. And I stand by that claim. The Shuri deck is incredibly powerful, and this particular build looks to shore up the couple of problems or ways that people are attacking it in the metagame. Shang-Chi is your biggest hurdle to climb over, and Armor as well as Cosmo answer that problem very cleanly. Captain Marvel is probably the least conventional choice inside of this deck list, but she's a clean answer to the other tech card that sometimes gives this archetype problems, and that's Arrow. If you're doubling a Captain Marvel up to 12 power, we don't care where our opponent slides it around on the board with one of their powerful cards because she's going to jump to wherever she's needed at the end of the game. You're also able to deploy Captain Marvel behind an Armor or a Cosmo in a lane that you're already winning, knowing that she can jump to another location out from that safety once the game has ended. I think if you're looking to just give yourself the best chance to ladder up in Marvel Snap currently, this archetype is definitely the place to go to. The second archetype that I think is incredibly competitive in the current Marvel Snap format is the various iterations of Lockjaw and Thanos. This archetype still has a lot of variation in the details that it contains, but I think the core cards in the Thanos Lockjaw deck in my mind are Thanos, Lockjaw, Quinjet, and Leech. That last one is the most important. This deck has risen to power and popularity in part because I think it is easily the best deck you can be playing Leech in the format, thus being able to push back Galactus and Deathwave that had previously been incredibly popular. This particular build is also playing the other two powerful tech cards in the format in Shang-Chi and Arrow, and we even have a little bit of Wave mixed in with a copy of She-Hulk to give ourselves our own mini Deathwave-esque combo where you can lock the opponent going into the final turn while you still get to make two powerful plays. The big question mark in the room after the most recent balance patch was, is the Change Sandman, now costing 5 energy but having 5 power, a reasonable and powerful card in the format? My experience so far has shown that that's not really the case. Ramping into this card with Wave or Electro on the 4th turn of the game is expending a lot of resources to not get a lot of power into play. The better decks in the format, Shuri and Thanos, both get ahead on board against you early, and then both contain enough big plays for turns 5 and 6 when they can only play one card a turn that they're still going to close the game out because you're so far behind, having spent turns 3 and 4 to only have 7 or 8 points of power put into play on your side. It is worth noting that we're still kind of fresh off of this card getting a pretty significant stat change, so my opinion on it could change in the future as new information comes around, but so far, my experience trying to build Sandman decks and my experience playing against a variety of Sandman decks has led to them feeling really mediocre at best. Where does that leave the rest of us that are looking to brew? Well, it leaves us between a 30 power Red Skull and a hard place. Most notably, a lot of the point slam style decks that I've enjoyed playing in the past, things like Cerebro, Patriot, and Surfer, all feel like they really struggle to keep up with the raw stats that the Shuri deck is able to put into play without playing something like Shang-Chi, and any of these decks trying to fit Shang-Chi into their plan then dilute their primary game plan enough that it feels like you struggle against other things that are going on in the format. Silver Surfer actually takes it from both sides when it comes to the tech cards because it's also pretty mediocre into Leech, which is incredibly popular as well. Speaking of Leech, one of my favorite style of decks to play in the format are the Moon Girl decks that double up the cards in your hand and put a bunch of stats with a couple of disruptive pieces into play at the end of the game, and they can easily play Shang-Chi and be reasonable into Shuri, but they tend to be pretty mediocre against the Leech decks like Thanos, which feels like they end up in a hard place as well. When it comes to brewing anti-meta decks, the kind of core package that I've had the most success working with so far is something close to this. The details could vary a little bit. I've tried a Darkhawk package in here, Stature, and other things, but the core idea of this group of cards is straightforward. We have Shang-Chi and Arrow as powerful tech cards that are interactive, and then we have Titania, the Hood, and Mysterio as cheap cards that don't mind getting leeched that put big power into play in the end game. Most notably, we can play out a lot of these cards alongside our tech cards in the final moments of the game, giving us a lot of flexibility against whatever we are playing into. That being said, the raw power level of what we're doing here is definitely a little bit on the lower side compared to what the Shuri deck and Thanos deck are bringing to the table, meaning in the games where we don't find our tech card that's good in a given matchup, or our tech card just ends up lining up in an awkward manner, we're often going to find ourselves retreating. To give a little bit of closing commentary, I think it's important to acknowledge that not all of your ladder and Marvel Snap experience at home are going to be identical to mine. Remember, I'm someone who has a complete collection. I'm someone who's playing on an account that's been infinite every season since season 3, and my MMR and ladder rank and everything else that goes into my matchmaking is going to be very different than what a lot of you play against at home. If the things you hear me talk about in this video, the decks that work or don't work, don't really feel like they apply to you, that might be because, well, they don't. Remember, at the end of the day, Marvel Snap is a game that you should play for fun, and ultimately, if you find yourself logging in and having fun when you're playing, you're doing the right thing. The reverse of that is also true, though. If you find yourself logging into Marvel Snap and feeling like it's a chore and a slog, my number one piece of advice when it comes to any mobile game or games in general these days like Marvel Snap is that if your game ever starts to feel like a chore, you should take a break from it. Games are something that you should play for fun. We all have plenty of chores we need to do in our adult lives that are not optional, and your video game that you play for enjoyment should never be one of those things. That being said, I have personally been enjoying brewing into this format. While Leech isn't a exciting card to have happen to me frequently, I am enjoying the brewing against it more than I was trying to brew into Deathwave and Galactus last week. So overall, the current metagame shift is definitely one that I personally have found favorable. I would love to know in the comments down below what you all have been playing against. Does your ladder experience match mine? Is it drastically different? I'd love to hear about it, along with what your current ladder rank is and what your previous ladder ranks have been to get you to that spot. As always, Thanks for watching all the way through to the end of the video. This was a longer and more rambly one, so I'm not sure how many people are going to hear this message, but thanks. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not. I post Marvel Snap tidbits here 7 days a week and deck highlights as well. I'd love to see you back again. Enjoy your weekend, folks, and hopefully see you back again real soon.